evening and very warm welcome to everybody to this evening's memorial in Saru's name. We're calling it the PK Saru Memorial Endowment Lecture. Am I loud enough, audible to the back? Okay. I'm going to read because I don't have a great memory. Saru was the co-founder and the first president of SAATA, which is the South Asian Association of Transactional Analysts. Saru was the torchbearer of TA in South Asia, and she leaves behind a thriving community of transactional analysts and a very rich personal legacy. We're honored to have so many people here from her family, her friends, colleagues, our esteemed guest, Dr. Ashlesha, with us this evening. I invite Ragini Rao, the president of SAATA, to please come up here. Ragini is one of Saru's earlier group of trainees, a TSTA in psychotherapy herself. Surya, if you could please. Surya is in the organizational field and has traveled from Coimbatore to be with us today. Thank you, Surya. And Ashlesha, Dr. Ashlesha, welcome here. Thank you for coming. Okay. This is Krishnan, VP Development at SAATA. Welcome. And the organizer of today's event. So all of what you see happening here, he's the man behind the scene. Thank you, Krishnan. We are going to light a lamp to start the evening. I'm going to call people one by one, and as you come here, Deepa will help with lighting the lamp, and I'll introduce who it is. Arif, if you could please. Arif, as everyone knows, is Saru's son. He's here with us today to really honor this memory of Saru. Thank you, Arif. Lali, or Lalita Matthew, is a TA veteran and a very dear friend of Saru's. I was just told by Surya that when they were all training with Saru, they all used to go sleep and stay over with Lali. Sai, again one of Saru's early group of trainees, and from a group that's produced, I think, the most current TSTAs in India. Thank you, Sai. Pratita, again, a first-generation Saru trainee. And Deepak is a second-gen Saru trainee who will come after this. But what was interesting to know is both Pratita and Deepak were with Saru just a week before her passing last year. Pratita, thank you. Deepak. Thank you, Deepa and Deepak. I'm going to invite Deepa to really open the day's ceremony with an invocation. Deepa is a trainee with Sai and Ragini.
गजाननयुतं गणेश्वरम् गजाननयुतं गणेश्वरम् गजाननयुतं गणेश्वरं श्रीगजाननयुतं गणेश्वरं श्रीगजाननयुतं गणेश्वरं श्रीगजाननयुतं गणेश्वरं श्रीभजामि सततं सुरेश्वरं श्रीगजाननयुतं गणेश्वरम् अजेन्द्रपूजित विघ्नेश्वरम् अजेन्द्रपूजित विघ्नेश्वरं गणादिसन्नुतपादपद्मकरं कुञ्जरपञ्जरचतुरतरकरम् कुञ्जरपञ्जरचतुरतरकरं गुरुगुहात्मजं प्रणवाकारं गजाननयुतं गणेश्वरं श्रीभजामि सततं सुरेश्वरं श्रीगजाननयुतं गणेश्वरं गजाननयुतं गणेश्वरम्. Thank you.
So beautiful, Deepa. Thank you. I invite Ragini, the President of SAATA, to now give the welcome address to everyone.
Good evening, everybody. I, along with the SAATA Board of Trustees, extend a very warm welcome to all of you here, colleagues and friends, to the first P.K. Saru Memorial Lecture. Thank you, our distinguished speaker today, Dr. Ashlesha, a psychiatrist and psychotherapist with Green Oak Initiative, has agreed to be the speaker today, and thank you for accepting our request. Today is indeed a very special day in the history of SAATA. We at SAATA believe that the P.K. Saru Memorial Endowment Lectures are one of the best ways we could acknowledge our dear Saru's contribution and pass on her legacy to further generations in the years to come. We at SAATA recognize that building awareness about mental health, the importance of seeking help, and establishing professional standards in mental health service is a need of the hour. And through these lectures, we want to collaborate with other mental health professionals in building a community that can achieve this goal in powerful and effective ways. P.K. Saru was the torchbearer for the TA community in India, and her contribution in building and expanding TA training is unmatched. She always wanted to be a doctor, but due to various reasons, she became a lawyer. However, life threw many challenges at Saru, and at one of those times when she was really low, her nephew, Unnikamu, who was training to be a CTA then with Father George Kandathil, introduced Saru to him. That started Saru's journey with TA. She trained with Father George, and he said to her, "Use your pain to heal the pain of others." And there was no looking back for Saru after that. She completed her CTA, became a PTSTA, and started training others in Coimbatore, Cochin, Chennai, Bangalore, many other places. And she completed her TSTA soon after. Her passion for travel, connecting with people, and training fitted so well together, and she single-handedly managed all of this for many years. Of course, later many of her trainees started co-training with her, including Surya, Mohan, who's not here, he's in Coimbatore, Chitra, and myself, and many others here too, who trained with her. In early 2000, she also started training in Bangladesh, and she did a few programs in Iran too. I think all SAATA members present here in this room have either been trained by her or are being trained by PTSDs and TSDs who trained with her. So we all owe it to Saru for our entry into TA and being part of this community. Saru would always say, only what is celebrated is sustained. And that's exactly why we are gathered here today. We want to celebrate her legacy and sustain it through these annual memorial lectures. Last and not the least, I want to thank Saru's family, her sons, Mansoor, Riaz, Arif, and Kausar, for supporting and funding this event, without which it would not be possible. I want to thank Kausar especially for being patient with us for the last 3 to 4 weeks, or even more, maybe 2 months, in all the phone calls, the mails, all that. And, of course, to Arif, equally special that you are physically present here with us today. So Saru will continue to live in our hearts forever. And thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Ragini. Saru's force lives on through her witticisms, Saruisms as they're called, and joie de vivre. Here are some poignant memories as shared by her beloved family, colleagues, and trainees.
Hi everyone, my name is Kwasar Padiat and I'm Saru's youngest son. On behalf of my brothers and my family, I just want to say how excited we are that this memorial lecture is taking place. I would first of all like to thank SAATA and all the organizers and volunteers for working tirelessly to make this event possible. We are so happy that we've been able to support the celebration of my mother's life. Many of you who knew my mother would remember her as a force of nature, with an unbridled zest for life. She was tirelessly energetic, a gifted organizer, always on the move, constantly traveling, meeting, talking, messaging, cooking amazing food, and sometimes doing all these things at the same time. But above all else, she prized a few things in her life. One of them was her very large and extremely close-knit family. She loved her family. It was her rock and source of strength and support throughout her life. The other were her friends. She had deep and meaningful relationships that she cherished with those friends all the way from her school and college days throughout every phase of her life. Her other passion was TA and the community of colleagues and mentors and trainees that she was a part of and that she helped foster over the so many years. Whenever I think of her as the great connector, the bringer together of people. She would be the one who would tell me if my cousin had a new baby, or remind me to call my aunt on her birthday, or tell me how proud she was when her trainee passed an exam and filled me in on all the latest happenings in the TA world. At some point of time, her family, her friends and TA all melded together. And whenever I would spend time with her during one of our visits to India, I would as likely be spending time with my cousins and aunts and uncles as I would be with her friends and TA colleagues, many of whom I too have gotten to know so well. I just want to take a moment to remember my cousin, Dr. Unikamu Moidin Kuti, who passed away recently after a bout with cancer. He was actually the person who introduced my mother to TA, and his untimely passing is a great loss to all of us. I know that my mother touched so many people in deep and meaningful ways, and that she is and always will be sorely missed. And after she passed, we wondered, what would the best way of honoring her legacy would be. A memorial lecture seemed like the perfect solution. Because if these lectures can continue her gifts of friendship and connection, then I know that her memory will live in our hearts forever. Thank you, and I hope that this is only the first of many lectures in the years to come.
Hello, everybody. This is Ilana, and I'm very sorry not to be with you all in person, but my heart and thoughts and love are all with you, and of course, particularly with Saru, a dearly missed and beloved friend, colleague, who I think of so often and miss on a regular basis. I think I miss laughing with her, I miss talking with her, I miss sharing with her, and making meaning of life together was a very beautiful gift that we both had together. So on this day, I wish us all beautiful, rich memories of a woman who gave so much and whose memory and life we will carry in all of our rich thoughts and love of her. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We've had so many videos, audio recordings coming in. We've had to sort of be a little stingy owing to time. We are going to play a few more later as we're talking at the end of the lecture. So if it grabs your attention, please take a look then. Saru has touched so many countless lives, and many of those people are unable to be here today, but we very much feel them and their presence in this room. However, to cherish and honor her influence, there are some people who we've invited today to share some of their experiences. I call upon Chitra, one of Saru's earlier trainees. I'm told she was one of her favorites because she used to do a lot of training programs with Saru for many years. And she's been part of the SAATA organization right from the start, holding many important roles, and is currently the ITAA president. So, welcome.
Well, I didn't want to miss out on saying those very, very important and things that really touch me about Saru. So I've borrowed size spectacles, which I forgot at home. And yeah, so here I am. I don't even know if I want to refer to it because Krishnan has told me I've just got 2 minutes, and I'll just remind me, Krishnan. Yeah. What can I say? When I attended the 101, I was really awed by the concepts of TA. But what stood out was the person behind that. And that was PK Saru. I experienced her as this person who had so much of potency, and how easily I understood the concepts of TA because it was held by Saru with conviction, with strength, with a passion and love for the subject. And it just reached me in no time. And I think I just pestered her for the next year or so to be a part of her training groups. She finally relented and I joined the TA groups. I think it was something that was a life-changing experience. I think that whole script and what opened out for me, and I said, this is the work that I wanted to do. Till then I had been an organizational person. And Surya, I might have just joined you. But this for me was so important, what I'd experienced, that I sought to carry this forward in whatever way was possible and touch the kind of, at least some of the lives that I could. She always said, carry it on and pass it on. And these words really ring. And Saruisms, for me, it's like I hear things that she says which are so important for all of us. TA is about living, learning. TA is about the generosity, and so many words of hers actually ring right across in all our ears. I think some of the key things that I want to acknowledge, there were things that were not visible to me, that were potent about me, that were visible to her. And she supported and facilitated me, and I'm sure and many of us, to look inward and see what's fantastic about us. And I think I drew strength from her courage. A week before my CTA exams, I said, no, Saru, I don't think I'm ready. She said, you are ready. And we may look at it from, the critical parent or the good critical parent, but I thought that voice really carried me with strength into those exams. I recall in the 2018 conference, she just impromptu got up from there and she just gave that speech. She wasn't somehow on that list on that particular day, but I just thought that was not complete as a convener. I said, next is Saru. And she said, me, Chitra? And just got up and she spoke and she couldn't stop herself. She was just so fantastic and spontaneous. I also remember that when I went to Bangladesh, I remember I would feel tired at the end of the day. And this lady had energy. And what Kwasa spoke about, that zest and that energy and that living physis that she was, she would say, Chitra, let's go shopping. And I'd say, Saru, I'm tired, just come and you'll enjoy. What are you going to eat? We'll eat Chinese. And I'll say, I want to go and eat oats. Oats, she would say. She was something else. And I think she was a grandmother to all our little babies. Every time she'd visit Bangalore, she'd get this little smocking frock for Mansi. And I still had it for a long time, till at one point I thought I'll gift it to someone else. I think she was a friend to all our spouses, and she was so much, much more. When my mom died, that week when as soon as she could, she just came there and sat with me for half a day. I just can't help but feel choked, because I think she was something much more than just being the trainer and supervisor for all of us. I think the last thing that I remember was, gosh, I have been to Coimbatore and I'm saying damn MLL, but the day she passed on, some of us could not be with her. And that just hit me. I said, gosh, I've met this lady literally every year of her life, of my TA life, and this is a time when I didn't meet her. And that's something that, I'll remember, and yet I cherish all the memories which all of us would. So thank you, Krishnan, for giving me this opportunity to say a bit, and glad I'm here. Thank you.
It's so touching and wonderful, Chitra. Maya Jaipal is a writer, counselor, and again one of Saru's trainees who passed her CTA at age 68 and made Saru so proud. So I think we'd love to hear from you, Maya. You're okay to come up?
Good evening. When I was first asked about, I think 3 or 4 days ago, to say a few words about Saru, I almost freaked out. I said, what am I going to do? I went through a gamut of emotions. I was afraid that I would forget what I wanted to say. I was insecure that I'd lose my balance and break a bone, which would have been terrible. And I was embarrassed because I thought my fingers would start fluttering all over and I'd lose my, you name it, every fear I had. But then all of a sudden, some bright light went off in my adult brain. And of course, you know who powered that switch which turned on that light was Saru hovering around somewhere. And this is why precisely Saru has endeared herself to many of us. And this is a trait that she has bequeathed as a legacy. For different people, she used different legacies. For me, whenever I think of Saru, I think of the 2 words role modeling. She had something in her head about role modeling. She would say, we are all role models in whatever sphere, spouses, mothers, fathers, parents, leaders of nations, we all can role model and should role model. And she did it herself. As Ragini said, she had a lot of issues, but she, went through all of them. And I believe that when she was a child, they were afraid that she would not live for very long because of her heart defect. But what she would do is she would go into her fears. And she always said that, go right into your fears and own them, own your fears. Don't fight them, don't use any language which had violence, but own them and say that you will work with them on a collaborative basis, not as dictatorial or anything like that, but on a collaborative basis. And when I see the pictures, I remember that she had a typical twist of the eyebrow and a twist of the smile, and then she would come out with whatever she wanted to say. So, when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's about 12 years ago, and at the same time my husband was diagnosed with dementia, and she rang me up. I don't know how she had this line to everybody. She knew everything that was going on. So the next morning, before many people knew about it, she had called me up, and she said, Maya, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking at the computer. You're reading Google, right? Because Google is what we all go to when we want some information. Right or not, that's our go-to for information. So she said, and you read in Google that you have about 15 or 20 years more to live, right? I said, yes. And she said, stop reading it. Switch off that computer and listen to me. And she said, it doesn't matter how many years you have, but what is important is how you live those years. And she said, she quoted another person whom I'm very fond of, Maya Angelou. And she said, live with a little passion, a little compassion, a sense of humor, and a sense of style. And she did that with perfection and with grace. So normally, when somebody dies, you say, rest in peace. I want to change that a little bit. I want to say, rest in power, Saru. So please repeat after me. Rest in power, Saru. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. I call Surya, who is the current SAATA secretary, ex-ITA president, and of course Saru's trainee as well, to introduce our chief guest, Ashlesha. She said, don't call me doctor.
No, Chitra's reminding me I'm the current vice president of professional standards of the ITA. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Namaste, namaskar, vandanam, assalamu alaikum. And that is how Saru would start all sessions. Well, that lady had something. Would touch us when she was alive and still continues to touch us. And she will continue to touch us through across generations. We have at least 3, maybe 4 generations of her trainees sitting here. Okay? And that itself speaks about her legacy. I know Saru from the first day of my TA journey, like many of us here, as a trainee, started to know her as a trainee, and then grew on to become a colleague, a friend, and also a collaborator, partner in so many of the work that we did. And over 2 decades of my life, I've spent with her in very up and close proximity. I would even say almost 2 decades, or for all practical purposes, lived at her house, I and Mohan, since '93. And that speaks for itself about her open heart. And many of us have been witness to that. And one thing that stands out for all of us about her is a need to be part of a community. And also her need to build community in the process. So I always think, why now? During this whole pandemic and lockdown. And my thesis is it's because she had to be alone. And that is one, when the community was taken away from her, I think that was the major force that really brought her down. And so I think it's only befitting that today we have a speaker amongst us who's also invested herself in building communities and supporting communities. When you're looking for the befitting speaker for the first P.K. Saru Memorial Endowment Lecture, we didn't really look for an intellect who could come and present a paper, but we wanted someone who lived their life almost closer to what Saru wanted to and what she did for her life. And that is how we arrived at Dr. Ashlesha Bagadia. In many ways, she may be unlike Saru at the look of it. First of all, she was a doctor. She is a doctor, which Saru wanted to be. And Saru always said, I became second next best to a doctor. I became doctor of the minds of people. That's what she used to say. I still remember the story that she was a great storyteller. The story that she used to say as a little kid, when she was 10 or 12 years, she used to walk around with that bag going from place to place, just like a visiting house doctor. And that's what her dream was. And so we have a doctor, so Saru will definitely be very happy. And she's a perinatal psychiatrist. I think one thing that really stood out for us about Dr. Ashlesha is being a psychiatrist, she's also a psychotherapist. And especially about perinatal psychiatry, she was trained in the UK, Australia, and Canada. And she's come back the last 7 years to be here and serve her community, the community from which she hailed. I think this is another thing which really struck us, which I'm sure Saru would be very happy about. Because Saru always said, think global, act local. And she did exactly that. She would travel all over the world, even during the, just before the session we were joking, saying, Saru knows somebody or the other in every part of the country. Not only the country, but on the world. Wherever she goes, she will say, oh, that person is there. So, but she'll always come back. And she wanted to serve her community. And another thing is, being a psychiatrist, Dr. Ashlesha is also trained in psychotherapy, especially therapy called mentalization-based therapy, which is used extensively in working with family systems and so on. And another thing which is again striking is she's not only practicing psychotherapy and psychiatry, but she's also training people in psychotherapy, especially medical professionals and all helping professionals to use psychotherapy along with their main place of work. I think that is another thing which we found Saru will be very happy about. I was just thinking and said, I was reminded of a Chinese saying which says, wise is the one, or the one who plants a seed knowing very well that they will not see the fruits or they will not eat their fruits is the wise one. But I always felt Saru had this audacity to say that I am going to plant the seeds and also going to eat these fruits. And she did that. She did see almost 3 generations of trainees, because one thing that she used to say right from the beginning is, we want to build a set of professionals. We want to build a community of professionals. That was her goal. Her goal was not to just go around and train people in TA and leave them like that. She wanted people to be certified. And every year she will keep count of how many CTAs have passed and how many TSTAs are in the pipeline and how many TSTAs have finished. Just like Chitra was saying, I still remember in 96, she was telling us, go for the exam, because we're having an international conference in 97 in Coimbatore. She told me and Mohan, go for the exam. I said, we are not ready. She got so angry. She didn't even answer her calls for a few days because she said, we are not going to do the exam. And of course, so that is the beauty of it. We used to work together, we used to laugh together, we have cooked together several times, we used to, of course, eat together, and we also fought together very often. And still, as Chitra was saying, at the end of the day, she would have all the energy to do more. And I'm sure if the pandemic ended sooner, she would have really be with us doing a lot more work. And that is how to me, it found, when we identified and talked to Dr. Ashlesha, she was also doing similar work, building community through her institute called PARC, Psychotherapy Associated Resource Center, where not only providing psychotherapy and psychiatric services, but creating many spaces where people could come and explore and heal through, I think I heard from Prakita that there's a lot of training happening, but also there's a lot of study circles, there are peer supervision groups, there are movie sessions wherein people could simply come and explore and themselves and find healing and a community. I think that rare blend of psychiatry, psychotherapy, and the spirit to serve the community is what makes you special today, and so befitting to have you as our speaker for the first P.K. Saru Memorial Endowment Lecture. So Dr. Ashlesha here for all of us. So welcome, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, for just, inviting me. And I'm truly honored and I'm humbled by this invitation. I actually did not want anyone to stop talking about Saru. I was like, can we just fill the evening with that? Because that was really interesting. And I want to learn more from all your experiences as well. So I'm hoping that whatever you said, the videos will continue, that will happen. Truly a wonderful legacy she's left behind. And I don't know what you might be expecting from the lecture, but I thought I might just talk a little bit about my journey in how I came about in this space. And I can see that there is a lot of, similar thought amongst everyone here. So I'm hoping that, we can not stop the conversation after this lecture. This is like a start of a conversation rather than just a lecture. So I work primarily with mothers, but I want to start by sharing a story of a father and a son that I first encountered when I was working at St. Martha's Hospital. This was before I had started my psychiatry training, and I was working as a senior house officer in the Department of Psychiatry. Now, this, at that time I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do psychiatry or not, and I was just sort of wetting my feet. And a young boy was admitted with quite a florid psychosis. He had become ill again during just before his engineering exams. He was an exuberant, very disinhibited, but adorable young boy who would just be running around the hospitals, and often we would be chasing him. But and we would get exhausted. The whole vigilance that we had to keep on him was exhausting. But his caregiver, his 50-year-old father, was tireless. He knew how to, talk him down from his high perch on top of a cupboard where he had found himself. He knew how to coax him out of behind the library shelves where he had hidden himself. And I was just in awe of the father. And by the end of the evening of the first admission, when we had, just going to keep this aside, it's usually, when we had, calmed him down, is when I got to listen to the father's narrative. And he said, he gave his backstory that his marriage was by arranged marriage, and he hadn't been told that his wife had a mental illness. And she had become unwell when she was pregnant. And unfortunately, soon after giving birth to their first and only son, she ended up killing herself. And I was stunned by this. But what actually stayed with me more was his sort of, as he was ending the narrative, he said, if only the family had trusted me and revealed the story to me, I would have perhaps, made peace with a life without children, just looked after her and myself, and, maybe been happy, and we wouldn't be all suffering here now. And at that time, I heard the story, I was very moved, but I didn't realize how it would continue to impact on me over the years to come. So I went on to UK. I did my basic psychiatry training there. And there, soon I was in the world of mental health, which only focused on the individual. The care was all about the individual. But there was a difference. There were a whole lot of people working towards the individual. There was a team of different mental health professionals, and they were all sort of focusing on looking after the individual, and helping them get better. And one of the teams I worked for, and as I recall that, I'm reminded by all the different words you used in describing your community. That team was made up of, it was a team that was looking after the early intervention in young people who became unwell at a young age, adolescents. And that team was made up of quirky psychologists, bossy nurses, very nurturing social workers, and innovative occupational therapists, and bewildered psychiatrists who were just sort of trainees like me bumbling along. But it was a wonderful team because everyone was opinionated, had a view on how we should be looking after this patient, and they often ended up disagreeing with each other all day. But at the end of the day, in the evening, there was always laughter, warmth, and solidarity, in all these different mental health professionals working in from different frameworks but coming together. Their main purpose was to make sure that ultimately whatever we are doing has to be a good outcome for the patient that we are working with. And when I left UK and went to Australia, I felt like a grief and longing of leaving behind a family almost not dissimilar to the family that I had left behind in India. So I go to Australia and I start thinking, and I have this in the back of my mind, that I can't just be working with individuals and somehow there's something lacking, but it's not very well formed. My first day, and I can never forget that day, and I'm apologizing sort of half-heartedly, but just like a disclaimer that I am giving you stories which are set in hospitals with mental health settings. But this is where my sort of life started, training life. So my first day was on an inpatient unit, and there was a middle-aged man, well, maybe in his late 30s. He was admitted with a bipolar disorder. And he was contesting the admission. He was admitted against his will. He was contesting the admission, and he wanted to be discharged. And it had been about 10 days since his admission, so he was not that unwell. And I had just got to know him, and I was thinking, oh my God, they might discharge him. I'm not sure he should be, because the reason for his admission was that he had tried to strangle his wife in the middle of the night when she had woken up to feed their 9-month-old baby. So this was all alarm bells ringing, and I was completely out of my depth. So I go into the tribunal, the process starts, and I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm doing here. I didn't have to, it didn't take very long. The wife was in the room, and she spoke up. And that's the first time I even noticed that the wife was in the room. And I'm ashamed to say I hadn't even spoken to her before when I was doing the prep of the patient. And she only said one sentence. She said, I love my husband, and my husband loves me and my son. I know the man who tried to strangle me was not my husband, it was the illness. And I want my husband back home when he's well and safe. He's not well yet. When he's well and when he's ready, I want him back. So nobody had to say anything. But for me, the first time in my training, my gaze shifted from the individual to the family. I was noticing the wife now. And I stopped thinking about, mental health in terms of words like psychosis, detention, medication. And I started thinking of, living with a mental illness, trusting someone to reveal your mental illness, growing up with a parent who might have trauma, trusting a spouse who goes in and out of illness, and starting a family with a spouse with an illness. So those things, I started noticing them more. And I started thinking I must find some skills to, start working in this area, because just the traditional psychiatry system is ill-equipped. And we're not able to do justice to really help improve mental health the way it needs to be. So that's where I was. And I was fortunate I was in Australia. Australia at that time was really working towards improving mental health services and looking at communities. And it has, from the Aboriginal culture, a very rich culture of families and communities and storytelling, which had kind of gotten lost, and it was finding it back. And there was a lot of narrative therapy comes from there. There's a lot of focus on families. So that was how I kind of started doing more work with families. And I got exposed to community work there, going to do home visits and working with different communities. And so I thought, okay, I've kind of, started to equip myself as best as I can. I even sought out my own therapy. I thought I was seeking therapy because I was working with this really difficult group of women who were self-harming. I said, this is too stressful. I should go and find some help. And of course, when I started therapy, I hardly talked about my patients. I talked about my family, my husband, my daughter, my, family of origin, of traumas that I had long forgotten, of fears that I didn't even know I had and had to start addressing. So I realized the other gap, of course, in our training was that we were not looking after our own mental health and how much my family was impacting on me and my work. And it needed to be the narrative. Along with just upskilling, we also needed to start looking after ourselves. And if we are saying that we should be looking at individuals and their families and looking after them in a family setting, then we also should be looking after ourselves within our communities. It's not enough if I look after myself, we should be looking after our community of mental health professionals. So that's when I really started thinking about, communities not just of our patients or the client or whoever comes with difficulties, but us ourselves as well. So I come back to India and I feel like I'm armed with, some skills, but lots of unanswered questions, ready to find my space. And what I realize is, I can do whatever I want. There's no dearth of space. And yet, there was just no space to do what I really wanted to do. And it was a bewildering and confusing beginning for me. You mentioned, that I'm a psychiatrist who also is a psychotherapist, but there were psychiatrists who were like, why are you doing psychotherapy? And I would have psychologists being wary of me, like, really, do you need to do therapy? Or family clinicians who would view me as competition. And all I wanted was, let's sit together and work together. And I didn't really want to be one or the other. I just wanted to be a mental health clinician. So that was confusing, and it was actually very lonely. So what I did in the next 6 years, as I always say, is really out of my own selfishness. I don't want to be lonely anymore. I want us all to be working together, and I don't want to be working alone. So I think that is the sort of pivotal change for me. I really thought that I don't want to do this alone. And not just me, I don't think anyone should be doing this alone. And, as I was listening to what everyone was talking about, Saru, I felt like this community is amazing, and everyone needs to hear about this community, and everyone should be working in this kind of community model, where we are not siloing ourselves in different groups. So the couple of silver linings that I had when I first started off, lonely as I was access to some incredible mentors in my own field. Dr. Ajit Bhide, who I worked with when I started off in St. Martha's Hospital, he was now my new neighbor. And we made this ritual of Tuesday morning walks, which we like to call our Tuesdays with Maury. And we would spend that walk, just exchanging stories, mostly me airing out my frustrations, and also learning from him about how his world of mental health was very isolating, how it was so differentiated between psychiatrists and other therapists or allied therapists. And so it was really useful to have that, and I still cherish that. We still do it. And it's really useful to have that because I feel like I was just frustrated and wild with different ideas, and he would bring me down to earth a little bit, but also say, yeah, that sounds good, go ahead. The other person that was a really good mentor and continues to be so is Dr. Prabha Chandra, who's now a dean at NIMHANS. And I was pleasantly surprised at how welcoming she was. I don't work at NIMHANS, but she's one of the few people who has taken mental health out of the institution. She tries and works really hard with, now NIMHANS gets a very unwell population. So there's not much she can do other than work with the unwell people, but she has taken, a lot of the care outside of the institution. And she started telling me about the perinatal world in India. And, she was telling me how less is known about mental health, about mothers and pregnancy and postpartum. So I started thinking that, if this had been known to our young boy whose mum passed away, and if there was more awareness that could be raised, that would have been so helpful to this family. So on the shoulders of these people, metaphorical shoulders of these people, I started looking around for other like-minded people. And I really wanted to, like I said, reduce my loneliness. I met, and I'm grateful for the day I met Dr. Soumya Krishna, who's my colleague and dear friend. She's another psychiatrist who had similar thoughts. So I realized that once you start sort of being open about this, you'll realize there are lots of people who think like you. And she and me started looking, how are we going to work together? We found another person, Jwala Narayanan. Some of you may have heard. I don't know if she's here. She's actually with the choir group. Her daughter's singing in the choir downstairs. And she does amazing community work with seniors with dementia. So we got together and started the Green Oak Initiative, where we really want to work with communities. We don't just want to look at treating mental illness. We want to look at what can be done before people become ill. What can we do, so that we can maintain the wellness and reduce the risks. We want to look at what can be done after they've recovered, so that we can improve their chances of full recovery, back to functioning, and not just working with them, but working with families as well. So we are still in the initial baby steps. But what, I've been proud to do is we are now a small and thriving center of 20 clinicians, and we are quirky, and I'm trying to get them to do things together. And I will take away one of Saru's Saruism to them and say, let's celebrate. What's celebrated can be sustained. I can't quite get them to disagree with me yet, and I'm working on that. I want the fights and the disagreement, because only then we can thrive really. So that is something that I'm really glad that you're working on, and it's a constant work. As I listen to Saru, and listen to all of you talk about her, I felt that even her not being here, I feel like I'm on the right track somewhere. This sounds like this is something that a wise person. I don't think second best to a doctor. I disagree with that. I don't think there's a comparison there. Definitely best in her own way. But a wise person thought similarly, and we are kind of just getting started. I wasn't really completely happy, though. There was still one problem, and that was the upskilling, and that was me thinking that, I would like to start looking at the mental health community. I started meeting, different people, TA therapists and psychologists from different backgrounds, counselors, art therapists and drama therapists, all doing amazing work, but all in their own little worlds. And I was like, but we're not talking to each other. We're all saying the same thing. So that's when Park came up with that kind of idea in the background, that we really want mental health to be the language of all these clinicians and working towards collaboration, not competition. I'd rather us do that. Competency, but not really competition. So Pavitra, who's here, is my co-founder, and I was, really fortunate to have this chance encounter with Pavitra Jairam, who is a journalist by background, and I had admired from afar, and we had sort of found each other in different spaces, common spaces. But when we came together, we realized that this is something that we can actually build. And I need the narrative to not be only coming from a clinician. It needs to come from other people who have better language, better tools to take it beyond just a clinician's field. Now, I've come from that very clinical background, so I think that we need to move around. And that's why I'm so happy that you guys have started talking about collaboration. So Pavitra came on board and we co-founded the park with a new lease of life. And we also onboarded a clinical psychologist who works with me, Purnima Mahindru. She's our lead faculty. And she's this quiet and assuming force behind all our workshops. And I'm hoping she doesn't sort of find something fancier overseas, although I keep telling her you should go work abroad and do these things. But in my mind thinking, just don't listen to that advice just yet. So we started Park that way, and that is really our aim, is to sort of, all of us have different communications. I don't want it to be just me talking psychiatry or perinatal or family therapy. We should be having conversations around different ways of working with people, because people are different. We're all going to need different tools and different styles to help the community around us. And at this point, I also would like to bring in another Saruism. I've gone through them all, and I find them very impressive. She says, one of the things she says, intent orchestrates outcomes. I didn't even know I had some intents or intentions till I started seeing the outcomes. And so I really, if that's one thing, as I look around, I want you to look around others around you today and in your daily professional lives. What is our intent? I mean, if we could reflect on what is our intent in our workplace. How are we looking after our clients? Are we doing it alone? Are we doing it with each other? How can we communicate with each other better, collaborate better with each other? And how can we look after ourselves, not just in building a community of better and well-adjusted people, but also a community of mental health professionals. And I'm hoping that we can go away with intentions that orchestrates into inspiring outcomes. Thank you so much.
This to the audience. Yes. Any questions for Ashlesha?
Shift the mic. Any questions?
Any reflections?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not sure what question, but we can just bring up stuff that they want to do.
Till the mic is passed on. So glad you did your lecture. So clear. Yes. It was lovely. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Madam, you mentioned about bringing different facets like art, through drama and other aspects. Have you done such type of combined workshops so that people are able to appreciate the different facets through which mental health can be improved? Or are you contemplating?
Yeah, definitely we're contemplating. I have done Theatre of the Oppressed. I don't know if anyone else here is aware of them. So Radha Ramaswamy, who is the founder of Center for Community Dialogue and Change, my English teacher from college. So after I stopped feeling intimidated with working with my English teacher, who is lovely by the way as a teacher, but then she's another role model that I have, and I've done her training. And she's one of the board of advisors for the park. So we're hoping to bring in a lot more TO work into the training and mental health. in the community that I talked about, which Jwala runs, she runs an enrichment program for people with dementia. They do a lot of artwork and movement-based works. So we are hoping that we can bring that together. I have not done myself because I'm not trained in any of those, but I've attended workshops where we've used a lot of games and theatre games to reduce the inhibitions of people and improve the reflective capacity. But that is something definitely we want to do more of. I think there might be two ways of looking at it. One is, as I learn more, I know that I want to work collaboratively, but I also know that it's okay to be competent in one field and to build that competence and bring in someone else and for them to work with competency in their field rather than me trying to do everything. So that's something that is my thinking, that I'd rather, I'll do what I'm good at and my colleague will do what they're good at and we come together and do what's required for our clients. So that's how I see it.
Ashlesha, I've come to the Green Oak and I've seen where physically it is and the variety of folks who come to visit either the doctor or the psychologist there. And sometimes when I reflect about psychotherapy and how it can come across very elitist and very, in this room with this, I'm just wondering, given the kind of population that I saw coming there, I'm just curious, what ideas do you have around taking psychiatry, psychotherapy, counseling, all kinds of mental health work into the masses? I'm just curious what's going on in your mind about that.
Yeah, so what we've done, and we're not very good at marketing it, so that's our gap. We started a low-fee clinic, and the plan was to start it before the pandemic, and then pandemic hit, and there was no way we could get people in. So the low-fee clinic is like a flat 200 rupee fee for anything that we walk in. It's either psychiatry assessment, psychologist. If they get therapy also, it's going to be 200 rupees, and we try and get the local community to come and use that facility. And the way we are asking people at the moment, it's still very much them coming to us. So as you're asking me, I think what I would love to do is do stuff more out there. But at the moment, that's what we've done. We started the low-fee clinic. It runs a couple of days a week, and we wanted to be really locally accessible to the community there. So amongst us, we speak most of the local languages. There is Urdu, Tamil, Kannada, Hindi. And we have a school next door. Some of you may know the Anaswamy Vidyalaya school.
Yes.
So we usually tell the school teachers and parents that they can access it. And by word of mouth, people have sent their maids and their home helps and other laborers that they might encounter. So we've started that. It's definitely still very much like, oh, something's wrong, I need to go see someone. They're not yet in this sort of space of doing wellness, just looking at wellness initiatives. So when we did, when there was a park group in one of the parks, Jwala was running a program for people with dementia. It was open to all. So there were curious people who would come from all backgrounds. But at the moment, we've just started the low-fee clinic, and that's all we'll be able to do.
And who's the staff at the low-fee clinic?
No staff.
The same staff.
It's our staff. So we are on a roster and we manage it. For the therapists, what we've done is that all therapists should have at least 1 or 2 clients from the low-fee clinic, and we shouldn't be doing like, when you come, I'll see you kind of thing. So they actually get therapy like how anyone else would.
Yeah. Thanks.
So that's what we're doing right now.
Hi. You've been talking about community building, not just in mental health. I think in any area that's a difficult proposition. So my question for you really is, in your experience, what was helpful and what were some challenges that you faced and continue to perhaps face in community building?
One was definitely coming down from our high horses and sort of not thinking that we know better. Definitely the school that I mentioned, I've been doing some groups for the teachers there And with the mothers, the school has a special needs section, so I was doing like a reflective group with the mothers. And not just my challenge, their challenge also was to stop looking at me as some kind of a psychiatrist who's going to fix their mental health issue, they don't have a mental health issue. So I was like, I'm just here for us to have conversations, and they would often bring a problem of a student not studying or something, and then ask me, what do I do? And I would be like, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, and we have to figure this out. And I'm more interested in what it was like for you when that student was shouting, right? So actually just reducing the hierarchy, and that really helped. I mean, I think they found it bewildering, they were not sure, they were like, okay, I'm not sure if I can just do that. And they kept coming with problems, and I kept not giving them solutions to things that were out of, I'm more interested in what's happening for you at that time, rather than fixing this problem with the student or fixing some problem with the school. So reducing the hierarchical differences were one thing. And we used a lot of different principles with the teachers. We used the TO principles. So also adapting to the needs of the person that's coming in front of you. That is something that also helped, because I feel like when at least from a mental health psychiatrist model, if I'm in a clinic, I have a template, I'm going to do an assessment, and I'm going to ask these questions, then I'm going to form a diagnosis, and then I'm going to prescribe medications. But sort of being able to work outside the box and saying, for this person, the medication is not going to help. And I worked a lot with mothers and babies. So I would sort of say, you can bring your baby, you can feed your baby, whatever you want to do, you do, but I'm going to work with you as best as I can. So adapting and not sticking by these rigid rules was definitely very helpful. What remains hard is, because I'm also maybe, not saying this is the model of community care and we're going to do it. It's not easy to explain to people also, because I'm not rigidly forming a model. I'm saying, let's figure out what are we doing and let's do what's best for this community. And we'll do it together. So that sometimes is welcomed, and sometimes like we don't know what you're talking about. So I think those are the barriers. But definitely reducing the hierarchy and being adaptable, and being able to listen to where people are coming from and then working around it. The other thing that we do, which you mentioned, is we do this monthly book club and movie club. So it's, again, we try and keep it multilingual if possible. It doesn't always happen. Once a month it's a book that's themed around mental health, followed by the next month it's a movie. And the idea is, I'm not going to tell you about some disorder. You read this book and you come and talk about it. Even there, we did a book called The Curious Instinct of the Dog in the Night Time. Some of you have read it. It's about a boy on the autism spectrum. And there was a mother who had come and she was like, tell me about autism, how to diagnose. And we really had to move away from that, because we wanted to have just open conversations on mental health. So that media is really helpful. We discussed a Tamil book written by Perinatal, and we had all read the English version, but he agreed to come and talk. And he said, I only speak in Tamil, and question answers can happen. But are you there for that one? It was, so that's another thing that we were able to then have people that hadn't attended before, who were there wanting to talk about mental health with a different language. It was really nice to hear that. And we are trying to encourage our staff to learn Kannada, because we don't know Kannada. Try and use skills in the local language as much as possible, which I don't think I'm very good at either. I mean, I've learned, the art of talking diplomatically in English, and I feel like when I translate, I have a lot of learning to do. So really trying to translate therapy in different languages to see if it really applies. Like, do we need to do something different? So in the book clubs and movie clubs, that's what we're trying to do, have different conversations, just conversations. So it need not be, you come with me with a problem and I'm going to fix it. Stop that all the time. If it needs to happen, it does. But we could also do other things, is what I'm trying to do.
Hi. I was curious about what you are trying as alternates to individual therapy. What are the experiments you've done, or what are your ideas?
So I run a group therapy program for people with personality disorder, and family therapy is what I do, so the whole families come in. I actually I'm not doing any, I think I have about 3 clients who are individual therapy, and they are doctors and senior clinicians themselves, but otherwise I mostly work with groups and families. So that's primarily in the area that I work with. We are also, one of the things I would love to do is work more with mothers and babies. So that's like working with dyads, couples, but couples with a systemic framework. So keeping their system in mind, and often it need not be family, right? For the guy, it could be his Sunday golf team, and for the girl, it could be, her mother's group or something. So including their system is what I tend to do as much as possible. So that's what I do.
One reflection and a question. It's very humble to see the calmness and like the collaboration. It's an appeal to collaborate, and that's very moving and very inspiring, because we can get caught in the intent and the idea of it, and it's like it becomes a Mercedes-Benz in the head. So I'm very inspired by that. And the second thing is also, when we're doing community work, there's so much to do. Like, you can get exhausted. Where do you draw the line, and how much, and how do you navigate what to do when and how much? So that's a question. I don't know if you have a full answer, but would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Very tough question, Deepak. No, I think that's something that I really struggle with, and I have people reining me in. Hold on, this first, then next. Of course, one of the ways in which I don't know if it's good or bad, but I get roped in certain things because it becomes a priority. When I'm working with pregnancy and postpartum, then that becomes priority. So some things go on the back seat for me at that time. And that's my area that is always a priority for me. So clinical work takes a little bit of priority if there's an emergency. We've now set aside a time for training, and that's one of the reasons where I have other people who are equally passionate, even more so sometimes than me, which is good. So we can, so I feel like it's a combination of prioritizing, sometimes by default because of the situation, not me really prioritizing it. But it's also about finding good people to delegate, finding good people to actually give me instructions. That's something that I feel I have sort of decision fatigue. So Soumya is like technically my psychiatry line manager. So she says, enough, you're not going to do this. And I'm like, yes, okay, thank you. You said it, I'm fine. So I think also switching that hierarchy to not just me being like a leader giving instructions, but also delegating someone else. You take care of this, and you tell me if I should do this or not. And that's really helpful. And it may be that I may know better, and they may not do as good a job or whatever. Those are the doubts you have when you begin, but it's fine because they'll develop it in the way they want to, and I'm just going to be a part of it. Whereas something else I'm going to develop the way I want to, and someone else will follow. So prioritizing and delegating effectively.
I think we have time for one last question.
There's so much that happens in neuroscience now, with neuroscience indicating that therapy and other paths to wellness have a solid medical basis, right? Which is how modern medicine practitioners are trained. This as a language to bridge both the world of modern medicine and wellness practices or paths to wellness, such as therapy or mindfulness. Are there efforts going on in that space? What are your thoughts on this, and what direction do you see this taking?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And so the mentalization-based therapy that was mentioned, it's a form of therapy, very specific, but they try and apply in different fields. And there's a lot of evidence to show brain changes. There's a lot of evidence to show, that there is improvement in clinical, presentation just with therapy and nothing else. Not even medication or even pseudotherapy, just therapy does make changes. Unfortunately, the problem is that therapists are not very good researchers. And that's one. But also the way research is conducted, I think that needs to evolve, and it's been very rigid and say that there is hierarchy of research. If it's case series, that's one level. The next one is a survey. The next one is a case control series, then randomized control trial. So there is hierarchy that is set, which psychotherapy can't really follow. We need combination of qualitative studies where you hear narratives of people, and so there is a move towards more qualitative studies. There is a move that combines the best of quantitative, what is the actual changes happening in the brain, versus what people are saying, what are they feeling, what are you noticing in their communities, what is shifting. So that is definitely happening in a larger scale overseas. We are very far behind in that aspect, and if there is research coming out of TA, that would be great. I think like you said, Saru is now, she went and spoke about it, she was very global and brought things locally. It is something that we all need to do more, talk more about what's happening in India and maybe collaborate with researchers. There are people doing research all over the world. Excellent. Excellent. No, there is definitely a lot of interest. So one thing that people like to hear from India is we have huge numbers. So if research is conducted well, we can actually give huge numbers. I also feel like we are talking about a lot of Western therapies, for example, and we're talking about it being done in English. So if we can start applying more, researching more in different languages to see if things change or things stay the same. And that is another aspect of research that needs to happen as well. So there is a lot of interest in people, and I'm glad you are bringing more people over, or people are coming over, and we are trying to do that as well. And right now it's building the skills, at least we are focusing on building their skills, but research is another arm that needs to happen more. So we are trying to do it, but we're not very good researchers.
Transactional analysis actually was developed as what Eric Berne calls tool for social psychiatry, and it was originally a methodology for group therapy. But of late, it's more like, especially in the psychotherapy field, the work is one-on-one, and we almost lost sight of the social dimension of how to impact. So, given that, what would you? I don't want to use the word advice, but what do you think we could do that could bring this sense of community and social engagement at both the levels? That is, how practitioners could really work together, and the second is, then how could we impact the society further? I'm
not going to give advice. I think I'm just going to think aloud, and let's hope that we figure it out or start figuring it out. So the reason I had trained in group therapy in mentalization-based therapy, but when I came to India, I was just doing it individually. And I soon got exhausted. One, because if I see people individually, then I can only see so many. And I am a systemic worker, so I realized that I find it exhausting. I want people to use each other and learn from each other. So I wasn't very confident, but I started thinking about starting a group. And the advantage of a group is, at least from the way I would set it up, is two people can work together and co-facilitate. So one of the things is to just do it. That's what I would say. If there is an interest in a group, maybe look at how it had started and what kind of a group could it be. I mean, you guys have groups of trainees, right? So getting a group of trainees together and just doing like a regular group model with them, not necessarily group therapy, but maybe a teaching group. So we have something called as Balint group. Maybe people have heard of it. It's a reflective group that was started by a GP. So we are a group of clinicians, doctors, psychologists who come together and we present a case. We're not there to solve the problem. We're not there to solve the case. We're just thinking of what are the things coming up. So thinking of using the principles of TA with the clinicians if you wanted to, or with a group of people that could benefit from it. I think starting and then troubleshooting might be a way to go. And also what we are doing in MBT is we are recording, we're video recording, and we are using that for teaching. It's very difficult, but what I found, and that's why I encourage my students to record, is that, of course, the recording means you are going to see yourself, and I'm always thinking, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. But when you watch the recording, you end up realizing you didn't do so bad. That actually was real, and it's always the case. There were lots of things that I cringe about when I watched the recording, but there were so many things that I didn't think was so bad. So I think recording or watching each other, we're not doing enough of that. We're not watching each other do therapy. And so if you have a co-therapist and two of you are doing something, then you're watching each other, you have like a backup. So I think doing it together can already be a little empowering, and then you can work out, and starting small and building up might be one of the ways to go, I think.
Thank you, Ashlesha. That was straight from the heart, and I hope your legs aren't hurting. You stood there taking all those questions. Arif, if you could please share, give Ashlesha a memento from all of us. Thank you so much, Ashlesha, for your time, for your effort, energy. We really appreciate it. I call Aruna, who is the president-elect for SAATA and a fresh off the boat TSTA, to give us the vote of thanks and conclude today's event.
I'm delighted to have the opportunity to express gratitude to all the people who made this happen. Thank you, Ashlesha, for accepting our invitation. I feel so joyful that we had a person who was so accessible, so enthusiastic, so committed, so innovative, so collaborative. Yeah, and I loved your vulnerability. I love your story-like manner. So I think it's a great start to the PK Saru Memorial Lecture. So thank you once again for being here. And and I hope we collaborate a lot. We as a community, I think your ideas resonated so much with us. I think SAATA's strength is we all work together, and we are very proud of belonging together. We know what we bring to each other, and we know that we can survive, flourish only as a community. So, and we are glad to open up and make our community larger and engage with people outside and flourish in the process. And now, people within whom I need to thank, so many quiet workers who made this happen. Manish, who's here, and Parul, the duo who really put together the website, handled the registrations, handled the social media with diligence, perfection, timelines, quickly adapting to all the changes seamlessly, professionally, attending to costs, attending to the Zoho website for registration, etc. Yeah, Asha for getting us the lovely refreshments or coordinating with the venue. Deepa for your beautiful invocation and organizing the tea and coffee. Yeah, Nisha for anchoring it so smoothly. And also designing the evening. Nisha George for diligently sending out emails, contacting all the 100 people who had registered, getting their confirmation. And the master puppeteer who managed all of them, our dear Krishnan. I think you should stand up and receive the holding the process from conceptualization to execution, giving each people precise timelines, clapping when their time was up. Yeah, coordinating with the family and doing everything with record speed. Yeah, instantly. And even above Krishnan, Ragini and Surya for beautifully holding the process. Yeah, the guiding light for the whole process. interacting with the speaker, inviting her here, and while being the leaders and mentors, also rolling up sleeves and doing what needs to be done as volunteers, so doubling up as everything. Pratita and Deepankar for managing the funds. We need money to make all this happen. And we've already thanked Saru's sons for really being the spirit and the intent, and for sponsoring this entire event. Thank you so much, everyone. Did I thank everyone? I need to thank the BIC team. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Saraswati, also for interacting with us, for making this happen, and all of you for being here and lending your energy and spirit to the evening. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and we'll have to do one more thing which Saru would love to do. So let me invite Aruna there, Nisha, Gunjan. Please walk there to the end of that. And these are our new qualified TA professionals in the last year. Gunjan, CTA Psychotherapy, CTA Education, TSTA Psychotherapy. And this is what Saru would do. Have them walk right ahead. Come, please walk here now to the front while we clap for you. Yay! Saru loved celebration, so we thought this would be a wonderful thing to do.
So the evening is done. You may mingle. We vacate the place by 8, right? 8 o'clock, please mingle. We're going to play some more videos, those of you who are interested to watch. Thank you all. Really appreciate all of your presence here despite Bangalore rain and traffic. Bye-bye.
Government? Welcome. Thank you.
Mingling is happening. And eating and mingling.
There are refreshments outside as you mingle and catch up. No, it's not clear.
Yeah.